All right, let's dive into this one.
2020, rapper Akon made an announcement that he was building his own $6 billion future city in Africa that looks like the hybrid of Dubai and the fictional city of Wakanda. Akon City is where innovation meets luxury, with 5 districts designed to redefine urban living. See the African Village District, where modern waterfront homes beckon, and a sprawling, all-inclusive resort awaits your indulgence. Experience exhilaration in the Entertainment District, boasting a cutting-edge multi-purpose stadium and a colossal casino for endless excitement. Witness the future unfolding in the Tech District, poised to become the Silicon Valley of Africa, where groundbreaking technologies shape tomorrow's world. And of course, the essential Health and Safety District, because public services such as police stations, fire departments, and a general hospital are key to residents' quality of life. The Education District will provide comprehensive learning opportunities for both children and adults, ensuring growth and development for all. And lastly, the glamorous Senewood District, which features 4 state-of-the-art filming studios, offices, and residential spaces, all culminating with the iconic Akon Tower piercing the skyline to glorify the genius who created this futuristic urban oasis. For the past 4 years, Akon and his team have been preparing this city to be ready for you to experience by 2024. And just 4 years later, this is what Akon City looks like today. Lies, corruption, collusion, a shady cryptocurrency, stealing native land. These are just a few of the villainous acts Akon has been accused of during this disastrous project. At first, many of his supporters saw him as a noble man making valiant efforts to create a real-life utopia, but now they question why the guy who believes that all men are divine kings to be worshipped by women wants to create and lead his own city. But before we get into the fall of Akon City, it is important to understand the actual amazing achievements Akon has made.
Now, minus us like kind of a sexist remark, right? There's something to note as you go into the story, and that's like someone could have good intentions, but like if it doesn't work out, then people tend to frame you as a villain. Think about all the times in your own life where okay, you might try to help somebody, and because it didn't work out exactly as intended, like oh, you didn't try to do it, or hey, you didn't really try to help me out. It's kind of similar to that, whereas like now they're trying to paint you as a villain for what you try to do, but hey, it was harder than expected. And I think Jay-Z actually had a similar quote about it where he was like, hey, live long enough to become the villain, where it's like, hey, if you're a person who's doing positive actions in the world, it's a good chance that someone's going to want to tear you down. And it's like, it's not because hey they are because you are a bad person, but it might be just like hey you make them feel bad about themselves for whatever reason, like who knows, but like that is a legitimate problem with a lot of social networks and social media today, where it's like hey they need a negative emotions actually do better online than positive emotions. They study that a lot in copywriting, and they study a lot in like the Silicon Valley, where it's like, hey, okay, you want something to go viral? Let's figure out how to tie a negative emotion to whatever you're doing. Like, there's social networks that's about like, hey, complimenting people, and then those didn't work out. So what did they do? They create some like certain apps like Be Real and other things where it's like, hey, or if anybody remembers that app Yik Yak or Whisper, those kind of apps where you can. It's supposed to be about complimenting people, but it actually works out better and becomes more viral if it's about slightly insulting classmates that are near you without directly insulting them, without tying a name to your actual message. So this is a common theme of wanting to tear down someone who's trying to do something positive for the world. Where it's just people just need a negative narrative to run with, and it's easier to spread that negative narrative than that positive narrative.
For over a dozen African nations. After Akon made millions of dollars in the music industry, he wanted to extend resources to Senegal, which is where he is from. Growing up, Akon knew the struggles of living in the dark once the sun went down. The town in Senegal that he grew up in, like many others, had no access to running water or power. Local economies were forced to shut down businesses when the sun set, and families were constrained to candlelight and kerosene lamps to complete their nightly tasks, resulting in over 3 million deaths each year from harmful fumes and fire. suppliers. In 2014, Akon Lighting Africa was launched. In the first year of Akon's Lighting Africa project, he brought solar energy to 14 different African nations. And although his intentions were noble, he had to implement borderline unethical strategies to convince nations to invest in solar. But before we get into that, a quick word from today's sponsor.
I love how they mention like, yo, this is some unethical stuff that he's doing, because I think back to the Valley, like Silicon Valley, and those guys literally do the most unethical things in order to get ahead. You hear about a guy starting on like a social network, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm going to scrape everyone's email from Instagram, because like, hey, people mention their emails occasionally in random comments in the comment section of their pictures, or like, hey, I'm gonna scrape all their high school names from the bio section, because a lot of like high school students tend to say, hey, I go to this school, or hey, I'm class of 2020 of this college, and it's like, that's unethical too. But it's interesting to see like, hey, they mention in his unethical practices, when it's like, hey, that's so common for some of the greatest companies that exist in America. Curious, just makes me very curious.
Cook Unity. Cook Unity is the first chef-to-you meal delivery service, made up of over 70 chefs who believe that great food should be for everyone. Each week, award-winning chefs craft hundreds of globally inspired meals, from vegetarian to paleo and everything in between. Meals are delivered fresh, never frozen, and the menu rotates every week, so there's always something new to try. Their subscriptions are super flexible. You can pause, skip weeks, or cancel at any time. Today, I am eating the gochujang pulled pork bows with banh mi slaw by Chef Fabiola Rivera. It took just 8. How much variety they offer. One indicated I can go with this grilled along with the Peruvian dish that takes just a few minutes to prepare. com/PatrickCC50 or click the link in the description below and use my code PatrickCC50 to get 50% off your first order of Cook Unity meals to try them out yourself.
I'm gonna give him the
One problem with Africans, he said, is that they often lack unity and are hesitant to think about the future. So he strategically approached nations who had upcoming elections, then installed solar systems for free in the village of the leader's choice, such as installing streetlights and solar panels for homes and businesses. Then it made those leaders look like they were invested in progressing their nation, which led to them receiving more votes from citizens.
And something you should know is that, like, when it comes to politicians, all that matters is the votes. And, like, unfortunately, Africa has, like, a long history of corrupted politicians, unfortunately. It is what it is. Like, hey, man, the island I was born into, we have a history of corrupted politicians. So, you know, I get it. But, nah. For the most part, Africa has a long history of politicians who are kind of wishy-washy, just side with whoever is backing them. Like, hey, I'm going to give you $1 million for your campaign if you pass this legislation. And it's like, yeah, that's been an ongoing problem ever since Africa got freed many, many, many years ago from their captors. I don't even like that word, but captors, yeah. Such as Britain, the Portugal people, yeah, it's rough, but it's been a problem, and it seems like it hasn't been fixed yet. I mean that is a problem here in the U.S., but normally the price tag is pretty high to sway a U.S. American politician, at least.
It came to the point that once that village was lit up, now the neighboring villages would bring pressure to the government and ask those same questions. How come we ain't lit up? Although many are critical of this tactic, at the end of the day, the communities are the ones who benefit the most. The solar electricity has allowed the vendors to operate for longer hours into the night and for children to study after dark. Also, just the simple installation of streetlights led to decreased crime rates due to the visibility the solar-powered street lighting provides. By 2020, Akon Lighting Africa has installed 100,000 solar-powered street lamps, 1,200 solar microgrids, and has created more than 5,000 jobs. But many people question how Akon was able to finance a project of this size. Sure, his music was successful, but we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in infrastructure costs. Well, he was able to land a line of credit for up to $1 billion worth of solar equipment with the finance arm of China Jiangsu International.
Also, something to keep in mind is Africa right now is a battleground between the U.S. and China. As some of you guys may know, I don't even like to go into politics like this, but essentially, there's two major superpowers right now. United States that's been on a run for like 200 years, and China has been catching up tremendously since like we outsourced our manufacturing to them. So like that big wave, was it the 70s, 80s, where we started an offshore manufacturing to China because we're like, hey, we don't need to do those type of jobs, right? China did an interesting thing where they flipped that into a win. Like they essentially said, okay, we're going to do this dirt cheap labor for you, right? And we're also, because we did it for you, we gained a reputation like, oh, we make all the goods for the US. And because of that, other countries start outsourcing their manufacturing in China. Now, China, as like the US economy grows, China economies grows because basically the more money we have in the US, that means the more goods we buy. The more goods we buy, the more money flows to China because we have to pay them for their services. And essentially that also has a trickle effect where other countries, as their economies grow, China grows. So, all that manufacturing income then flows back into China on a grand scale. So now China is now a world superpower, a second world superpower. And, even though the U.S. kind of like outsourced manufacturing with China, China doesn't like the U.S. I guess we aren't on friendly terms. Maybe it's because the U.S. has a history of bullying other countries, like from Europe to Africa. I remember I had a friend in college who he was I think he was from Guyana or he was Nigerian. No, he was Nigerian. Yeah, and he was telling me the woes of like how people feel about the U.S. overseas, specifically in Africa. And he was like, the U.S. is kind of a messed up place because they make us sell them. So the African Nigerian country sell into America. They make us sell African beans, so like coffee beans and like chocolate beans, cocoa beans, essentially, and they make us sell to them for a discounted price for hypothetical numbers. Like, hey, we have to sell it to them at a discounted rate of 10 cents per cocoa bean, and then they force us in writing to say that we could only buy chocolate from them. So meaning we can't make chocolate and we can't buy chocolate from any other country. We have to buy it from them for $1. So we have to sell our beans for 10 cents and we have to buy all chocolate, and we can't make our own. We have to buy all chocolate from the US for $1. So now we're 90 cents in debt per chocolate buy. Let's say if it's a 1-to-1 ratio of cocoa beans to chocolate bars being swapped back and forth. So we're growing greater and greater in debt. And even though we want to back out the deal, the US is like, if you back out of this deal, I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to tell every single other country not to buy from you or not to sell to you. And it's like, that's called bullying. I'm pretty sure most people are like, yeah, that's bullying. So like, this is a current issue going on. So with Africa becoming a new hub of places people want to invest, like for example, Akon want to invest in Africa, the U.S. wants to invest, and China wants to invest. A lot of people want to invest, and China's like, hey, we can probably form bonds with Africa a lot easier than the U.S. because the U.S. has a little history with Africa, when like that whole 1800s trade, that transatlantic trade, that good that it was sending back and forth, oh gosh. But no, for the most part, that is what's going on. So now Africa, in order to spur the economy, they're taking loans from China, and China is willing to give that money because they're like, Africa, we see that you have people. We see that because you have people and because you have land, you can grow into something massive in the future. What that limit is, we don't know, but it could become more massive than what you are. So we're willing to give you loans on the fact that we believe that you could get there. And this is how it leads to like Akon being able to fund these type of endeavors over there in Africa.
Group, which is a Chinese government-owned construction firm. Most of these African nations could not afford the upfront money for installing solar infrastructure, but Akon's line of credit allowed the governments to pay in installments.
But when Bush was in power, Bush created a 200% tax on all solar or all solar-related renewable energy coming into America. So all that investment, those billions of dollars of investment that China put into this, was just sitting in factories and sitting in China, couldn't be used. So I took advantage of that and went down to China and to partner with some of those companies that couldn't use all that, investment that they already put for Europe and America.
Because of Akon's efforts, an estimated 28.8 million people can now enjoy the same benefits of electricity that much of the world has enjoyed for decades.
You've always said that China has done more for Africa than any other country.
I mean, it's true. That's not something anybody can argue with.
Yeah.
I mean, they came, they laid down infrastructure. They actually did something that the European countries been around for 400 years and did nothing.
Yeah, as some of you may or may not know, like, even though America was the great cause of the transatlantic trade, of course it wasn't just America. There was Spain, Portugal, Britain. But even though America was like one of the most famous of the transatlantic trade, it is... most of the territory in Africa was conquered by European nations. So think Portugal, think Spain, think Britain. And once they left, they didn't leave it in the best state. Like, they extracted all the resources and good out of these countries and did not replenish it. So it left them with a broken government because the people that was placed in charge, like the politicians, were not educated and were not taught moral values. Hey, you must... have the best interests of your people and not your own pockets, aka bribery. And Europe, because of the stereotypes that were placed on Africans at that time, thinking that they're less than human, less intelligent, even if they were human, they didn't see the need to want to go and reinvest. However, China sees the value in it because they themselves were a developing country. We don't use the word third world anymore, but they were a developing country once upon a time, and they understand the concept like any country can grow into something. Now, just taking advantage of from a business perspective would be the best choice, and that's why they decided, hey, we'll take that bet. Going back to the previous points I mentioned before.
That's why you see Africa now hasn't been developed. This was the responsibility of France, Great Britain, Italy, Italy, Germany. These guys have been in Africa forever, and it's never been developed. China just started putting interest in Africa. Now you have roads, roundabouts, like they're actually putting structure now.
Now, China has been investing in Africa since the early 2000s, but their interest has dramatically increased in the past 10 years, having loaned $170 billion to 49 different nations. And while the Chinese government investing in Africa is a major step forward into the advancement of those nations, some people think that they have a secret evil motive behind their interest. Now, obviously, these Chinese investments need to be paid back. The problem is that Africa's total debt from 2000 to 2022 is around $1.8 trillion, which is 300% higher than Africa's GDP growth rate in the same amount of time. Basically, they're in a lot of debt and don't have a stable way to pay back the money. But that might be exactly what the Chinese government wants. Debt trap diplomacy, or the Chinese debt trap, is essentially their strategy of building expensive infrastructure and assets that these African nations cannot afford, secretly hoping that they will stop making payments and then China will take control of their land or assets that they just built. Now, why would China want to control a bunch of land, resources, and assets in the middle of Africa? Your guess is as good as mine. But these theories were spawned after an investigation into these loan documents.
In one report...
By the way, complete separate side note. In Detroit, like all the properties that were getting bought up in 2018? I mean, of course it was us as a people from across the nation wanting to reinvest in Detroit, but like a large percent of it was like Chinese investors. No one talks about it, but there's research that's shown that like, hey, the private investors were from overseas, specifically China. It's kind of cool to see. Okay, let me not say cool. It is interesting to see them actually. One second, my phone is ringing. It is cool to see them actually play long term. Yes, we'll call it play long term. From a non-emotional standpoint, play long term. But yeah, I'll just play out.
Which analyzed 100 Chinese contracts, it revealed that the loans are structured to give an advantage over other creditors and allows action to be taken if the borrower acts contrary to the interests of a People's Republic of China entity. There are also unusual clauses that shroud agreements in secrecy.
So what exactly would constitute as acting contrary to the interest of a Chinese entity? Well, that's really vague, likely on purpose. Who knows what would legally count as acting contrary?
Definitely working with the U.S. will count as against their interests. So, like, yeah, once you're in deep with them, I see it's like kind of like mafia ties. Like, yeah, you're not messing with our enemies.
And as far as these unusual confidential clauses, well, that alone is enough for some people to believe that China is trying to be vague and non-transparent on purpose. But others believe that this is just extremely standard contract practices that the World Bank and any other small bank in existence provides, and that the Chinese debt trap as a whole is just more Western propaganda to, one, demonize Africa more, and two, make Americans hate the Chinese government. Think about it this way. When you're buying a house, does the government, the media, or the banks call it a debt trap? No, they call it a smart and often necessary investment into your future. But if you can't make your payments on your house, they take it away, and now they own it. So wouldn't that make buying a house an American debt trap? It just...
Actually, the concept of debt trap, and this goes back to the days of like when there was mafia in America, and I think Korea also dealt with this kind of mafia problem. A debt trap is technically an interest rate that under 99% of circumstances, someone is not going to be able to pay back. That is a trap, a honey trap. And they make you take the loan, not outlining that, hey, because it's compounded at a certain rate, you will never be able to get out of debt. You can argue with American mortgages. If as long as you work a 9-to-5 job, you should be able to pay off that mortgage eventually. 30 years, 40 years, but you should be able to pay that off, that mortgage, as long as you don't refinance and do something crazy. And I mean, this isn't like 2008. We have gained ethical practices. No matter how much people like to shit in America, like we have tried to progress with like certain practices that will cause our own citizens to become permanently in debt, because like certain debts aren't race based. Like certain debts are just regardless of race, and like, hey, we can say no matter what color or gender you are, I wouldn't want my own people to be in debt. Speaking as a politician who set these safety guidelines in place back in 2009. I wouldn't want my own people to be in debt. I wouldn't want the economy to crash, which then affects them directly. So no, we don't really have a debt trap necessarily.
Comes down to whether you think China is doing extremely standard business, or do they want these nations to fall short on payments to take over their assets and gain power in Africa. Regardless, Akon's relationship with these Chinese financiers and previous success with lighting Africa allowed him to pitch his newest venture, Akon City. He claims that he was able to get his $1 billion credit line raised to $5 billion with these Chinese investment groups. Following the announcement of the city, Akon went on a publicity tour promoting the new project.
The president of Senegal gave you 3 square miles of land.
Well, this is the thing. I had to actually buy the land, so it wasn't gifted to me. But what the president and the government are doing, they're
3 square miles is not a lot. Let's just state that right there.
actually laying the foundation for all the infrastructure on the land. The basic sewage, electricity, things like that. All the things that have to be set forth for me to build the city on top of.
Okay.
And they give me 100% full, support.
The city will be built on a 3 square mile plot just 60 miles from Dakar, the capital and largest city in Senegal. Now, 3 square miles is not a ton of land. That's 2,000 acres, or a little more than double the size of Central Park in New York City. However, Akon says this version of the city is just phase 1 of a multi-phase plan. He also announced during this time that Akon City would operate fully on their own cryptocurrency called Akoin. Akoin is a stellar-based cryptocurrency designed to fuel rising entrepreneurs in Africa and beyond. Akoin will be used as a common medium of transfer between Africa's 54 countries, each with its own volatile currency, allowing African citizens and entrepreneurs to engage with the digital economy with only a mobile phone.
People don't always have access to, bank accounts and so forth, but everybody has a phone.
Everybody has a phone.
So with the phone, you can make payments.
Absolutely.
And that's how it all kind of fits in.
That's
to the
where
thing.
it makes all the sense in the world.
Okay.
Akoin is not a groundbreaking technology. Many Africans have adopted crypto for everyday use as it is generally more stable and flexible than their country's native currency. But even before crypto was adopted, over 50 million Africans use M-Pesa, or mobile minutes, which is kind of like the Cash App or Venmo of Africa. Millions of Africans can transfer money to family members in different countries or pay for goods and services with ease using M-Pesa. It would be significantly easier for Akon City residents if the country was built around a more commonly used cryptocurrency or just sticking with M-Pesa. So why Akoin?
How much Akoin do you actually own?
I mean, I got in the bank.
Akon said it himself. He is the bank. Not only is he building a city named after him, but also creating the currency that he controls and owns the most of. Before launching his Akoin cryptocurrency, the Akoin website announced a pre-sale opportunity called the Token of Appreciation, or TOA campaign. This pre-sale was treated like a donation, and donors were promised 4 tokens for every $1 spent. Akoin was launched on most major crypto exchanges in early 2021 and peaked at around 58 cents, which at the time was around a 132% gain for the TOA.
Now, to explain this, because it's going a little bit into the more technical details, it's like his idea is that, like, hey, if everyone buys into this coin, we could have our own system of economy of banking that we can use to fund this project, where we keep on investing in it. And then because it's going up, because we are putting our own dollars into it, other people from other countries will also want to invest in it because they're like, oh, this is a way of indirectly investing in Africa. The only thing is that crypto behaves in a cycle. It's a 4 to 5 year cycle. And essentially every 4 to 5 years, crypto spikes. And this was around the 2021 mark right here. And yeah, he launched it thinking that crypto will continue going up, and he didn't realize the inherent cycle where it's like things that go up must come down eventually. Our economy is much like that. Like, hey, 2008 crash. Before that, it was a bull run. The economy was doing well, then it went bad, then it goes back up again in 2016 all the way to 2020, 2021, it starts crash. It's a whole cycle to it. And he just picked the wrong moment to launch this project, because he launched it at the peak of the crypto bull rush for that 2020, 2021 cycle. And yeah, if he had launched it, let's say, going into like 2022 or 2023, he'll be doing really good right now as we go into 2025 and crypto is starting to pick back up again. I'm like, he picked a bad time. Doesn't make him a bad person.
Holders if they sold. However, the majority believed in Akoin, so they held. Within a few months, the price began spiraling down to roughly 10 cents per coin, taking TOA holders from a 132% gain to a 60% loss. Due to the shocking dip, Akoin admins offered a refund to their initial donors. One donor named Marcus said, "The refund was meant to come a few weeks later. We are now over a year, and we're back at the same situation we were years ago with the lack of communication, and now everybody's up in arms." But Marcus isn't alone. The owner of the Go Black to Africa YouTube channel showed proof of him emailing Akoin admins only to be ignored for years. The YouTuber wrote to Andrew of the Akoin Foundation requesting a refund on December 19th, 2021. Andrew replied 22 days later and said that the YouTuber was added to the list for refund requests, and we will be reaching out shortly regarding further details on how to proceed. The YouTuber provided his physical mailing address, which Andrew claimed was the next step towards a refund, only for him to be ignored for 4 months with no refund, and now it has been 3 years and still no refund. When Akon was asked about these refunds, he said,
You can't refund something if the market goes down. It's like, if the market goes down with a cryptocurrency, I would like to be able to give your money back, but everyone already took their money out of the economy. Like, because crypto is essentially an economy. If everyone takes their money out, I have no money to give you. And that's just the nature of the business. I mean, of course, maybe that should have been disclosed. He probably indirectly disclosed it. 1 second. My phone's ringing again. My alarm. But for the most part, yeah, he he didn't have enough money to refund everybody. He might have tried to with his own personal income that he made from music and real estate over the years, but he wouldn't have had enough money to refund a whole crypto economy of people who he invested into the cryptocurrency he created.
He had no idea there was any problems.
That I was aware, because I know all the people that I knew that was on record. We definitely met with everybody, and this was the agreement that was actually agreed on. So if there was anyone outside of that, I definitely wasn't aware.
And those people who've asked for their money back, I'm expecting a year ago, when will they receive their money?
Well, that I'm just literally on everything finding out. So I'm gonna definitely get more involved and figure out what that's about. But we do have instruments in place to make sure those people are happy, even if I gotta go in my own pocket.
But as far as we know, Akon has not come out of pocket to pay these people back. The coin eventually fell to $0.0029, which is essentially a 100% loss. At the moment, Akoin is not listed on any cryptocurrency exchange, so nobody can buy it, sell it, or use it anywhere. It is worth nothing.
Akon had appeared that he was doing a good job, but it seems though that he is just like most who would want to use Africa only for his own benefit.
As if it couldn't get any worse, Akon...
By the way, that was a nice beach. It kind of made me feel like I was back home in the Virgin Islands, but yeah, I gotta see what beach is that. I might actually have to visit there sometime. I didn't know Africa had beaches that nice, but yeah, my own ignorance, of course. But no, saying that he did it for his own gain, I don't know how I feel about that one, because due to the fact that, first of all, with all endeavors, you have to gain something from it. It's hard to discuss, but even with your greatest heroes, they have to gain something from it. Whether you're talking about like Martin Luther King or like Malcolm X, they have to gain something from it. And for them specifically, the gain that they would get would either be their own equality that they would receive or their children would receive. The whole American economy, the way we started, was based off the idea that we would behave in our own best interest. And because we behave in our own best interest, we would naturally help everyone do better. Hey, by me starting a business, that means I would provide goods that people needed that they didn't have before. By me starting a business, I now have employed people so that they now have an income. Because before then, they were a farmer who was not doing well. Now I gave them a choice of a stable income because their farm was ups and down. They didn't know how to farm corn. They were doing pretty bad during drought season. That's what our economy was based off of. And that's what just entrepreneurship in general was based off of, regardless of the specific country. So to say that he was doing it for his own good, naturally speaking, yes. Whether it's relationships, like, hey, okay, you join a relationship because that person makes you happy. They enter a relationship because you make them happy. As soon as you don't make them happy anymore, they leave. As soon as they don't make you happy anymore, you might try to communicate with them. But after a while, if they continue making you unhappy and not returning the effort you put in, you leave too. This is human nature. And for some reason, we want to vilify people, saying, hey, they do this out of their own interests. Yes. They did out their own interests. And the goal is to help someone else as well as help yourself. And that just seems like the natural nature of human nature.
Akon City today is an utter ghost town. Last year, this picture went viral of one singular Minecraft concrete brick laid in the center of Akon City, showcasing an extreme lack of progress being made considering the fact that Akon said the city would be done by 2024. However, there is a little more than just this one stone. Today in 2024, you can see the first completed building, an extremely standard and non-futuristic building that they say is a recreational center. There's also another small, barely constructed building with a spiral staircase, which, to be fair,
I just want you to know, it was not coincidental that it was definitely coincidental that we was both wearing white tanks. That was kind of funny for a second, 2 seconds back, that portrait. Yeah, I was like, It's kind of weird as hell. Random weird thought.
Standard and non-futuristic building that they say is a recreational center. There's also another small, barely constructed building with a spiral staircase, which, to be fair, does look like a small version of what the original vision depicted. However, 99% of the land remains vacant with wild cattle grazing. Yes, technically construction has begun, but as you can see, this is a far cry from the futuristic megacity we were promised. Akon blamed the pandemic, saying everything would be pushed back by 2 years, which doesn't really make sense considering he announced Akon City to the international media when the pandemic was at its worst moments. The unfortunate part about the land that's just sitting unused is that the land belonged to several hundred people who are still owed compensation from the Senegalese government. The first phase of Akon City was supposed to be built on 55 hectares of land secured by SAPCO in 2009, eventually expanding onto a further 500 hectares by the end of the decade. Macky Sall, the president of Senegal, said, "My problem concerning the land is not with Akon. My problem is concerning SAPCO, because it is them who took the land from the villagers." Originally, the Senegalese government's tourist board, SAPCO, was backing the project, saying, "We believe in Akon City and we are all supporting Akon so the Akon City will come to life. It will attract tourists and investors in the region, and SAPCO is fully committed to the success of this project." But most recently, they have sent Akon a formal notice that if the project has not advanced by next year, its contract with him will be terminated. And since Akon has massive...
By the way, I must ask, and if anyone knows, I would love to know. How did he convince a government to take away private land from villagers? I'm just like, I have mixed feelings about it. One, first emotions, it's not right, because I can imagine like my house being taken. That sounds horrible. But then I'm like, yo, if you actually were that entrepreneur, like the founder of Uber, or the founder of Airbnb, or Steve Jobs from Apple, if you're one of those founders who could get magic to happen, and you took away their land to make it into something better, it would be like, oh snap, he was a genius, he was a futuristic leader, and he did the necessary sacrifice in order to better the entire population. But right now, it looks like, damn, you took away land from people. Oh, that's rough.
overpromised and massively underdelivered, people are starting to question his intentions in the first place. "I plan to retire in that city," he says confidently. "I don't like to use the word king of the city, but that's what it will turn out to be." Words like this have made some people believe that Akon City is just an empire to inflate his ego at best and a corrupt billion-dollar scam at worst. Additionally, Akon's views of the Western world's morals and gender roles has made people disagree with him as a leader.
But what happens in today's society, the woman chooses which role she want to play. In the last 10, 15 years, I haven't met a woman that can actually cook. I haven't met a woman that actually wants to clean the house. I've met the baddest bitches on the globe and asked to go to the bathroom, and the bathroom looked like shit. Hair all over the place, all kind of products. Like, come on now. That's a natural instinct. That's a natural instinct. I'm with you.
Maybe this could just be a joke, but Akon does follow a very non-Western style of raising his 9 children. With 7 different...
Man, this man really puts his foot in his mouth. I don't know if they just grabbed that one clip, because, you know, everyone could just grab that one clip. Like, Duke, Dennis, and, like, Kai Cenat talks about it all the time. Like, and I think Sienna, I think that's what her name is, mentioned it too, is like people just grab clips out of context on the internet. And this goes back to like all those other videos I mentioned to you before, is like people just like want to tear people down for no apparent reason, maybe for their own gain, maybe they're getting ad dollars from it, who knows. But like, yeah, it is it's interesting. So maybe he got taken out of context, but like the context I'm seeing right here, I'm like, damn, man, you put your foot in your mouth every time. I don't know what like cultural belief that you may have had before that might have encouraged you to like state that opinion. But unfortunately, or fortunately, actually, depends on who you're looking at, people have free rights and they could choose to live how they want to live, regardless of their birth, gender, or sex. Honestly speaking, like who you want to date, now that's a separate question. You can say like, hey, I want to date XYZ type of person, and you can say that's a final opinion. You want to date that person, and not everyone is suited to be that person. To say every person of who's born a certain gender should fit that role, kind of weird. I don't want to say weird because like the internet uses that too much. It is highly opinionated and very biased and very closed-minded.
Women.
Single time you're at every single recital.
No, that's a white man's thing. Who gives a fuck about a recital? The reason why people like me can't spend every single day and minute with their children is because the mother's job is to be there with the children. I'm the man. My job is to provide comfort so the mother can provide and raise those children to be like me. Now, if it's a man...
Man, this guy just puts his foot in his mouth. Damn, you're making it very hard to defend you. You make it so hard to defend you. Bro, shut up. Fuck. Oh, God.
And when a child gets a certain age, that's my responsibility now to show him what a man's role and responsibility is. But you can't expect a man to conquer the world if he's home with children. In life, there's roles.
Yeah, no.
A man has his role.
Yes.
And a woman has her role.
Yes.
But the day the woman believes that the man is supposed to share her role with her, then that means she's lacking. So I don't go pull my wife out to the construction site to go pull nails in 2x4s because that's not her play. A guy ain't got time to be in the house all day with no kids.
Now, this could be chalked up to just a...
You know, the thing is, let me, like, before this gets out of context, the thing is, you could interpret what he's saying in the correct manner. Of course, what he actually thinks based off of this clip is kind of backwards, but, like, intellectually backwards, but he's basically stating for his personal relationship, he wants to have a certain gender dynamic. And there are people in this world who are okay with that, who want to fill that role and dynamic. But it's because he makes overarching statements about like, oh yeah, this gender has to do this and that gender has to do that. I'm like, what if people want to play whatever role they want? Some relationships, people take half and half of each one, where she wants to be in the construction site. The dad wants to be home with his kids 25, 45, 50, 75% of the time. There's uniqueness to individuals that we did not have before because of the constraints we had of that current time period in the past. Now we are blessed with good times, and we can say, hey, I can be whatever I want. I could do whatever I want. I could be a man who wants to stay home because of the sole fact that, hey, it's no longer about brute strength anymore. It's now just about intelligence. And it's like, hey, can you make something happen with your intellectual mind without, even if you are the weakest, skinniest person there is? So it's like, I understand what he's saying in the context of what he wants for his relationship based off historical relationships between human beings of different genders in the past. But like, it's fine for him to want that. It's not okay for him to say it in a manner that that's how the world's supposed to be. That's the real issue in that.
Traditional style of raising a family, but sometimes he justifies his beliefs with extreme levels of bro science.
So, as a woman, her role is to support the man. The man, we are the kings and the divine of this universe. A woman can never compare to the man. They have to understand that here in America. The women don't create life. They support the creation of life. A man right now can create life without a woman, but a woman can't create life without a man. If I wanted to create life right now without a woman, I would just shoot my sperm, put it in the incubator, and just...
Damn. This guy, you make it so hard to defend you. So hard to defend you. It's painful for me to watch this, guys. Give me a second.
Give it 9 months, even maybe less with today's science, and a baby will be born. A woman can't do that.
Hopefully in Akon City, he is not in charge of the education curriculum because his science is considerably off here. Akon is likely referring to vitro gametogenesis, which is essentially creating an egg and a sperm outside of the human body to create a life. And the answer is no, we cannot do this right now. We can fertilize a female egg and a male sperm in a lab environment, but in order to give birth, the fertilized embryo must be transferred back to the woman's uterus. At the absolute worst, Akon could be a scammer with a god complex.
By the way, I actually appreciate that little like tidbit that Patrick threw in there, because for me, I study computer science. I'm not like a biologist, so I actually appreciate like the little input of like, okay, this is how the science actually works. But yeah, Akon, man, you gotta stop talking, man. Like, you gotta stop talking.
Who is willing to take Chinese money to build infrastructure that African nations cannot afford, only to line his own pockets while these nations crumble and get taken over by the Chinese government. Or at best, he is truly trying to build a futuristic utopia for Africans, and unfortunately, the massive political and economic responsibilities were far more than he could handle. And as of right now, Akon City won't exist for a very long time. But to be honest, it probably never will.
Okay, we're about to go on to the next video, but it's kind of funny that it has Diddy as the next suggested video for me to cover, because there's no defending Diddy. I literally cannot defend. I'm like, damn, bro. I've seen some clips, seen some testimonies, and I'm like, yeah, man, I'm gonna need you to stay in there. I'm gonna need you to stay in that prison, bro. Like, you can't come out, man. You a terrorist. You terrorizing people. Like, all right, let me go on to the next one. Okay, so this is the update for like, okay, what he's been up to since that last video, because like, hey, it's been like a year or two. Let's see what Akon's been up to. We understand it has been collapsed in 2021, 2022, 2023. We are 2024 going into 2025 now. What are you doing to help the people that you have literally taken their homes from? And of course, this is not me saying this to bag on him, because, you know, I'm always supportive of someone actually put in the effort to make a change in the world, like actually make a change instead of just sitting down and commenting on people. So I'm actually curious to see what has he been up to.
Yo, talk to me. I saw what is going on with the city, with your city, because I saw that the synagogue said that you had like a deadline, and give me the update on what's going on, because a lot of people calling you like saying it was a scam. Like, what is happening?
Okay, first of all, it's a city.
Let's clear it up.
No city is built in 24 hours.
Right.
A house takes 12 months, sometimes
For
18.
sure. Sometimes longer, yeah.
We're building literally a city, right? So it's going to take time. I think the mistake that I made was promoting it while the concept was being put together. So what happened was people already assumed that it existed. And that's what it was. So while we're trying to put together the licenses, getting all the feasibility studies going on, the environmental studies and all of that's happening, the world is looking at Akon City as if the construction had already started.
Because you had already started talking about it, yeah.
Right. And I think, but these are all mistakes that you make as you go.
Yeah.
Right now, the process is still in motion. Things are already moving. And as time go, that's why I've been keeping...
It's very mixed emotions when it comes to that, because he says like, hey, I shouldn't have talked about it. But one thing I've learned from living in Silicon Valley is that like you are supposed to talk about what you're working on before you actually launch. The reason why is, and of course this is going to be contrary to like popular knowledge, but the reason why you want to talk about it in advance is so you can start getting input and advice and help from other people. As you talk about your journey going from zero to building your first like small little project to building something bigger, people follow you along the journey. They're like, oh wait, this guy actually tries to do things. Like, I saw when he had nothing, he actually pulled something off to do something a little bit bigger than what he had before, and now they want to support you. Now, the reason why I say contrary to popular knowledge is because, at least in the black culture, we like to say, yo, we shouldn't share our thoughts, ideas with other individuals due to the sole fact that like they start to hate on you, they start to like bring you down. And that is an accurate statement. I've talked to like enough guys on Xbox. I'm like, those guys are kind of negative. But like, yeah, I don't think that he shouldn't have talked about it. That's not the issue. The issue was your timing, because you did it during the crypto crash and you kind of hyped it up. You should have maybe talked about it, but then say like, hey, you should like give yourself more leeway and say, hey, this is our plan for 2030, instead of saying, hey, this is our plan for 2023. The city's going to be built. I'm like, bro, you really thought you should have like under promise and then over deliver it, as some of my teachers in college used to say. Is like, hey, you don't say you're going to do this magnificent thing, because now if you don't completely hit it, even if you do a really good job, you're going to look bad. Also, my camera just went off, so give me a second. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. Like, I had a Joelle message, had to help her out with some. Yeah, as you know, we're planning this event for the Detroit party, and coming up December 14th. So yeah, that has taken up time, so I had to get to that. Apologies, but let's go back to this.
A light, quiet conversation when it comes to the city until we get further into the project to where I can start having real conversations about it.
Have you, like, are you in Senegal like good in terms of just like?
Oh yeah,
they're up to date on what's
everybody's up to date. Everything is on the up and up.
Have you seen this? Just unrelated, but have you seen this thing that they're building in? I think it's in Dubai. That long.
Yeah, Liam. That's in Saudi Arabia.
That shit is crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. And interestingly enough, the guy that put together that whole master plan is the one that I just brought on board to help me arrange some ideas over at the city.
Yeah, for people who don't know, they're building this like long steel city.
It's like crazy.
It is something that you would see like in like a sci-fi movie as a kid,
right?
And they're actually doing it. It's like I saw a stat that like they're using like 20 or 30% of the world's steel manufacturing is going to that city right now, because they're building this city in the middle of the desert.
In the middle of the desert. And
it's like it's this. It looks fake.
It looks like a line.
Yeah, it's fucking nuts.
and that whole line, everything will be inside it. By the way,
like everything you need: grocery stores, gyms, entertainment,
subways, transportation.
It's so crazy.
Once you're in there, you're in there.
So you brought that guy on to help.
Yeah, one of the guys that did the master plan is working with me now.
That's fucking awesome, man. Nah, that's cool. You got to get a little condo over there in that.
I'm definitely gonna have a spot in Liam for sure.
How for you, man? Like, what is? Sure. I feel like we're also in like a cool era where a lot of we got Juvenile's Weed sitting here. But Juvie's on tour with Manny Fresh doing his 25th anniversary of 400 Degrees. I mean, T-Pain's had such a crazy touring renaissance. I feel like we're to the point now where we're kind of like appreciating guys like yourself and like the era of music, because like you said, the vibrations in music have been so low, and whatever we said earlier about like like obviously drug dealing and shoot 'em up shit was glorified during your era, which was my era too.
Right.
But also there was a lot of music that was just fun.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like if I think of you, like your biggest records, like they're just fun.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, do you feel like that's what's missing right now? Is like artists are like kind of getting away from just like, like people need music to live to. People.
No, they do. I think today they're too cool to have fun.
Yeah.
It's
like you've been to a club.
It's almost like being fun is being soft.
Yeah, you go to a nightclub, everyone's standing around mean mugging, holding fucking bottles.
Yeah, right. Everybody is too tense, man. Like,
it's crazy.
Yeah, it's way too much, man. Like with us, it was different because when you did get that energy, it stayed on the record.
Yeah.
Because regardless of what it is, when you came out, everybody was still cool. But on the record, it was on the record. It's business as usual. But when they meet up in person, they be like, nigga, that lined up and get you on that next record, nigga, watch. You know what I'm saying? It was different because we understood that it was still entertainment.
Yeah.
Today, they think entertainment is supposed to be life, and life has to be reflected in the entertainment. Yeah. And that's where it gets dangerous.
Okay, so I didn't fully get his update on Akon City. Now, I understand this whole thing on music.
Dennis, this video is titled 24 Hours in Colorado.
That's a separate video. We're going to touch on that one soon. But no, I mean, for the most part, I don't feel like I fully got his update. Like he said, like, hey, he has people working on for the master plan. It seems like he has not been sued to oblivion. So it doesn't seem like there's a true update just yet. It seems like he's being quiet about it because he basically brushed over that topic. But, as long as he's working on it, that's all I can really hope for because, hey, technically speaking, at least he's trying to better Africa. A lot of people aren't as invested as he would be, as he has been over this 5 years. They would have given up by now. So he's talking about like, hey, someone who helped out with a project in the Middle East. I'm like, okay, that's cool facts. I hope you get your finances together. That's the more important part to me. But no, I guess that's his update, honestly speaking. Tell me what you think about it. Tell me what you think about Akon City, the direction it's going, his plan, his execution of how he's doing it. What do you think about it?